Chapter 41. Armor Beast Tribe, Sworn to Loyalty to the Master. Purple Armor flicked his finger, and the purple energy condensed into a bolt of lightning that screamed straight for the scout. The blast detonated in front of him, the shockwave throwing him backward and slamming him onto the ground. Pain lanced through his chest as if his organs were shredded. Blood framed his mouth and stained the grass. He coughed, trying to lift his head, eyes full of desperation. He knew there was no escape. Purple Armor's power far outstripped anything he could resist. "How boring," Purple Armor said. He now stood over the scout, looking down with no pity, only cold intent. Purple energy gathered at his soul like a crumbling peak. He raised his foot and brought it down without mercy on the scout's chest. The man's pupils tightened as the shadow of death closed in. He strained to move, but an invisible force held him rigid. All he could do was watch. The foot landed with a heavy thud. Ribs shattered under the pressure, the crack loud in the still air. Blood burst from his mouth, splattering Purple Armor's boot. Then the scout's spine snapped with a sickening split. His body went limp and slumped to the ground like a broken rag. "How fragile," Purple Armor said with a hint of disdain. He withdrew his foot and glanced coldly at the corpse, his face carrying that hungry smile, as if killing had been no more than a diversion. Cleanup complete. In the wasteland beyond, where heaven and earth seemed suspended in time and the sky sagged under a pall of gloom, a different sound cut through the desolation. The steady, grinding roar of a production line. Rusted metal plates and rough-forged components had been welded together into a vast, mechanical spine. Gears and chains interlocked at its core, grinding low and relentless. Tons of profound iron fed into the system, forced through presses and molds until raw metal emerged, shaped into titanic forms, some beast-like and ferocious, others like iron fortresses. Mechanical arms assembled the parts into hulking constructs, their surfaces patterned with gears and arcane filigree, every inch engineered for war. At the end of the line, finished forms slid away. Black iron armor beasts, bodies cast from profound iron, their shells etched with complex runes and gears. Cold red lights glowed in their eyes, as if they watched the desolate world and waited for orders. The production line breathed like a living organism, its roar, its molten iron, and its rolling bodies seeming to mark a grim new life in that forsaken place. "Master, at our current efficiency, given enough profound iron and deep silver, this single line can produce 30 black iron armor beasts a day," reported a voice. 120 black iron armor beasts await the War Mecha King's command, came the reply. Lanjia Beast had shifted back into his original form, his sky blue shell gleaming, mechanical eyes rotating and glowing a fervent red. He knelt on one knee before the figure at the end of the line, massive and deferential, reporting with visible reverence. The man in the purple robe stood with his back to them. The robe's hems were stitched with golden patterns that resembled ancient runes. He was not tall, but his presence was like a mountain, unyielding. He turned slowly. Deep, starlit eyes met them, seeing through pretenses and piercing to the core of things. A faint smile curled his lips, one that chilled rather than reassured. "Awaken, my warriors," Chen Zhou said. He extended his hand. The original energy amethyst he carried flared, turning into a suspended purple light. That gem, fed day and night on the world's energy, held vast, pure power. As Chen Zhou's spiritual body willed it, the amethyst rotated and showered particles of purple light down over the black iron armor beasts like a sacrament. The cold red in their eyes shifted to deep purple. Their metal bodies trembled as if waking from a long sleep. A low roar rose from one of the beasts as it pushed itself upright, joints clicking and adapting to motion. One by one, the others followed. Stiffness gave way to fluid movement, and the line of constructs became living engines of war. "Master, the Armor Beast Tribe swears eternal loyalty to the Master." Lanjia Beast cried, his voice thick with awe. Chen Zhou smiled and watched the newly awakened army. He slowly lowered his hand and let the amethyst settle back into his palm. "Armor Beast Tribe, sworn to loyalty to the Master," he intoned. "Armor Beast Tribe, sworn to loyalty to the Master." The black iron armor beasts answered in unison, their mechanical throats amplifying the vow. 120 armored titans thrummed with life, their chest-mounted circular energy cores blazing, metallic claws glinting, black shells unyielding. and joints moving with calculated precision. They were war machines made flesh and steel, ready to obey. The oath echoed across the barren landscape, a promise forged in metal and purple light, sworn loyalty to their master until death. Chapter 42, The Power of the Alchemist. Chen Zhou stood at the end of the assembly line, gaze steady and deep. Under the overcast sky, his figure seemed almost aloof, like a god shaping fate, looking down over this bleak world. He ran his fingers over the original energy amethyst in his hand, feeling the vast power held within it, and the smile on his lips widened. Very good, warriors of the Armor Beast tribe. Your loyalty will bring me endless glory. His voice was low and commanding, carrying an undeniable majesty. At his words, the black iron armor beasts bowed their heads one by one. Though their bodies were cold metal, beneath the wash of purple light, they took on a semblance of life, seeming to possess will and spirit. Lanja, speed up the assembly line. I need more warriors. Chen Zhou's gaze shifted to Lanja. His tone allowed no refusal. Lanja immediately lowered his head and replied with mechanical precision, Yes, master. I will strive to improve efficiency and ensure the number of black iron armor beasts produced each day reaches its maximum. Chen Zhou nodded, eyes sweeping over the awakened black iron armor beasts, a depth of meaning flashing through them. But Lanjia hesitated. Chen Zhou waved a hand. Speak freely. Lanjia recovered and spoke plainly. If we deploy the entire Armor Beast tribe outward, it will let us break the 7 treasure-glazed tile merchant guild's channel control in the short term, but we'll lose a layer of official market protection. Lacking high-end combat power will be a hidden danger and make it hard for us to secure a foothold in the Sun-Moon Federation. Chen Zhou was not surprised. He had already considered that. Even if the strongest purple armor beast could contend with an ordinary titled Douluo were rarely ordinary. Spirit tools amplified their power and made them far more formidable. Lanjia, he said in a low voice, at your service. Lanjia bowed, waiting for orders. I want you to train the Armor Beast tribe here. Teach them basic knowledge about the Douluo plane for 10 days, Chen Zhou instructed. After 10 days, have the black iron armor beasts change into human form. Use that to expand our influence, slowly erode the portable spirit tool market, establish intelligence networks, and buy land on the outskirts of East Sea City to build a spirit tool factory. He already had a long-term plan. The birth of the Armor Beast tribe was only the first step. He needed more power and resources to secure a firm place on this Douluo plane, and maybe even overturn the existing order. He envisioned the machine beast world turning countless planes and planets into resources that would help him approach the door of truth, to the extreme and the true of ultimate understanding. Chen Zhou's demeanor here at East Sea Academy was not the domineering stance he showed in the machine beast world. He seemed more like a scholar, young in appearance, but wise and composed in manner, making it hard for others to judge him by his age alone. In a secluded corner of the academy, a small pavilion called Qingfeng sat among verdant foliage. It was elegant and modest, like a finishing touch in an ink painting. Afternoon sunlight filtered through layers of leaves and mottled the blue stone floor. A warm breeze carried the fresh scent of bamboo. Inside, a stone table held an open book on the development of future soul technology. Its pages fluttered slightly in the wind. Chen Zhou sat upright on a stone stool, focused, fingers pressing the page as he read with care, as if he intended to imprint every sentence into his mind. The book had been hard to find in the uneven library. While some views were dated, its unfettered thinking had given Chen Zhou many insights. Imagination was essential to a researcher. Without it, research was rootless imitation. From a short distance, Guyo in white watched him. Teacher Wu sent me to challenge you, she announced, not attempting an ambush so much as to state her presence. Chen Zhou glanced up briefly and returned to the book. Guyue, the little elemental controller, pursed her lips at his lack of seriousness. She summoned 3 sharp ice cones that streaked toward him. Chen Zhou continued reading, unmoved. Just before the cones struck, he flicked a finger. An invisible fluctuation rippled outward, and the ice cones shattered into a spray of tiny crystals that drifted away. Guyu's pupils tightened. She had expected resistance, but not this effortless dismissal. Far from backing down, she grew more determined. You don't seem to be taking this seriously, she said coldly. Chen Zhou finally closed the book and looked at her with a faint smile. An elemental controller, rare, but your power isn't enough to warrant my full attention. You don't understand how to use elemental power, Guyue snapped, angered. Wind blades whistled through the trees. A flurry of slicing air mixed with light refracting ice cones launched at Chen Zhou. They were meant to blind, to dazzle and cut. Chen Zhou's interest, briefly piqued, faded. Good idea, but crude. He whispered one word, alchemy. Alchemical energy within him swelled subtly, precisely deployed to construct defenses. The wind blades and ice cones struck an invisible barrier and dissolved into ripples, then into countless tiny fragments of energy that dispersed into the air. Guyue's face went pale. She forced herself to focus, quickly forming hand seals as elemental energy gathered around her. Chen Zhou remained calm, pressing his outstretched hand down. In an instant, the ground beneath Guyue turned to a treacherous quagmire, as if countless huge hands reached up to drag her under. Her spirit power was interrupted. She stared in disbelief at the sucking mud. This instantaneous reconfiguration of the elements, smoother and more refined than her own elemental control, was on a different level. She had never seen anyone manipulate elements so effortlessly, as if the elements were a part of his body. A sudden, unprecedented sense of crisis flared in her chest. She could not hold back. Gritting her teeth, Guyue threw herself into a frantic surge of spirit power, struggling to break free from the mud's grasp. Chapter 43, Stealing the Heavens and Replacing the Pillars, Rats in the Gutter. Stubborn resistance. Chen Zhou shook his head, tucked the book under his arm, and walked away without looking back. With a casual wave of his hand, the muddy pit beneath Guyue erupted, swallowing her up and turning her into a mud-encased statue. "Let me out," she cried. Before she could say anything else, the mud prison began to drag her downward, leaving only her head above the surface as the mud rapidly solidified. Chen Zhou had already put distance between them and had no intention of returning. When you challenge someone, you must accept the consequences of failure. Of course, this crude mud cage could not truly hold Guyue. Though she lacked the ability to manipulate earth at the moment, her elemental affinity made escaping such restraints much easier. Still, she could only struggle helplessly for now. Guyue, plastered in mud, watched him with a complicated expression, a blend of curiosity and hesitation about this inscrutable man. Is what I'm doing truly right? Chen Zhou closed the book and murmured a line of an old poem as he walked, his indifferent eyes suddenly touched with something like feeling. The great river flows east, washing the heroes away. Right and wrong, gain and loss all dissolve into nothing. The green hills stand unchanged. How many times has the sun set blood red? Fishermen and woodcutters age by the riverside, used to autumn moons and spring breezes, a pot of turbid wine, happy that we meet again. So much of the past and present can be laughed about. Time had ground his emotions like a millstone. At first, immortality had filled him with ecstasy and zeal. He ran to spread the news. But the long march of years had steadied him, tempering that fervor into calm profundity. He looked toward the sinking horizon, the moon rising like a solitary bright pearl, and the old life inside him, the soul that had lived hundreds of years, began to stir. Heaven and earth refinement. Those 4 words, barely a whisper, seemed to ring through the air. If a spirit master with strong perception had been watching, they would have seen something shocking. Around Chen Zhou, the constant flux of heaven and earth had stopped. Where everything normally shifted without pause, the world in his vicinity froze into a subtle, obedient stillness. The torrent of natural laws bent, notes of the cosmos falling into place like an orchestra under the conductor's baton. Within that sphere, reality obeyed him, a small domain in which heaven and earth reformed themselves. This was heaven and earth refinement. Between heaven and earth, nothing is not present. Nowhere is not present, he muttered, a faint smile touching his lips as if sharing a secret. True power, he thought, never rested merely in the flesh. It lay in seizing hold of those seemingly unreachable laws. As he spoke, the air shivered. A breeze rolled in, fresh and old at once, and an almost violent current of energy followed. Fallen leaves were drawn up, condensing into pinpricks of light that danced like sprites. Dark clouds swelled overhead, and the oppressive damp along the road out of the campus seemed to echo the world's unease. In this restless heaven and earth, Chen Zhou's little figure looked lonelier than ever. The loyalty of his black iron armor beasts and the Lanjia beast had given him a foundation, but he still felt a nameless oppression, like an invisible hand steering him toward a deeper vortex. The heavens have gone wrong. He looked up as thunder began to gather in the darkened skies, a sound that felt like an admonition. Changing the heavens and earth, what an audacious plan, what a scheme. The 9-year-old body he now occupied took on a grave dignity under the rolling thunder. Chen Zhou closed his eyes and let the older soul inside him awaken fully. The prime energy amethyst he had been cultivating for 9 years pulsed within him, and a silent, vast force unfurled. "Who are you?" A deaf, resonant shout came from the ethereal core of the world. Chen Zhou's soul did not answer. His gaze cut through veils of concealment and fell upon the golden ancient tree, the planet's supposed heart. Instead of majestic strength, it was strangled by masses of blue-silver grass parasites. Trunks, branches, roots, everywhere the parasitic grass coiled and bound, as if a silent war had been waged, and the ancient tree stood weakened, waiting for fate's sentence. "It's rude of you to spy on others like this," another voice snapped, and a huge hammer-shaped shadow slammed toward Chen Zhou's soul. He felt it, the strike, the sudden withering of his aura as power was drawn from him, as if some thief had plucked energy straight from his core. His eyes flashed, and the attack stole most of his strength in an instant. "You!" he hissed. "How?" A desperate cry sounded from the golden ancient tree, or rather from something bound to it. Chen Zhou hesitated, sensing the cry as both accusation and plea. With a helpless sigh, he reached out, plucking a strand of energy from the endless starry firmament and pouring it into the heart of the golden ancient tree. Instantly, his spiritual form dissolved, and he returned to his 9-year-old body, standing in the rain. The torrent that had been gathering above released in earnest, thunder losing a bit of its mournfulness and instead cracking with anger and resentment. Chen Zhou looked at the prime energy amethyst in his palm and felt a stab of frustration. The amethyst, which had stored 9 years' worth of pure energy and had fueled the creation of his Lanjia beast, purple armor beast, and hundreds of black iron armor beasts, had been almost entirely drained in mere seconds of soul projection. Where once it glowed purple, it had become transparent and crystalline, as if cleansed by the ordeal. "Still, if I can foresee the dangers to this world, it was worth it," he murmured, frowning. The ability to tamper with a world's origin could not have been within the reach of just those two creatures. There had to be a mastermind pulling strings behind the scenes. "Little rats in the gutter, wait until I pull you out." A cold amusement flickered across his features as he promised himself retribution. At the same time, Tang Hao was calling Ah Yin's name anxiously. The golden ancient tree, having been supplied with energy, unleashed its long-suppressed fury upon the blue-silver grass that had latched onto it. How dare a lowly parasite try to take its place? If not for that brazen interference, how could those two beasts have found it and calculated the timing of its slumber? Even stripped of much of its authority, the golden ancient tree was still formidable. Leaves and branches crackled with power. Thorns shot out and drove deep into the blue-silver grass, which screamed in agony. Ah Yin, who should have taken over according to the plot, cried out bitterly as she struggled under the parasite's constraints. Once the parasite took hold, escape was difficult. All she could do was fight with everything she had, clinging on until Tang Hao could recover and come to her aid. "Ah Yin, wait for me." Tang Hao's eyes burned like torches. He clenched his teeth and settled into meditation in that strange realm, scrubbing himself to regain strength so he could rush to her side. Chapter 44, Sun Jing, Shui Shuheng. "Hello, I am Sun Jing, Deputy Minister of the Mecha Department of the East Sea Legion. My name is Lanjia. You should be familiar with me, right?" Inside an abandoned factory, Lanjia tightened his grip on the communication device Purple Armor had taken from the East Sea Legion operatives sent to track them. He connected the call. "This is a misunderstanding." There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, a low voice replied, "Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding?" Lanjia watched Purple Armor slip out first, then answered coolly, What does Minister Sun want with a wanted criminal like me? Sun Jing's temper flared. He had little patience left. Lanjia, you know you're wanted. But thinking of the 3 Mecha Brigade pilots who were still unaccounted for, he swallowed his fury and demanded in a cold voice, "Where are my 3 Mecha pilots?" Leaning back on a cracked sofa, Lanjia waved a hand as if dismissing the question. "What Mecha pilots? I found this comm device. I haven't seen anyone." "I'm warning you, Lanjia. Think carefully before you answer. Do you know whose jurisdiction you're in right now? Your businesses only run with our tacit approval. One order from me and your spirit tools won't be allowed into the market." Sun Jing's threats crackled through the device. Lanjia turned the speaker away from his ear until the roar faded, then put the handset to his mouth and shouted with complete indifference, "You're Sun Jing of the East Sea Legion, right? I'm on my way to morning class. You, a deputy minister of the Mecha Department, a bright prospect of the Sun Moon Federation, and your Legion's internal affairs are full of holes opened up by Shrek Academy, and now you're barking at me? Don't you understand the consequences of your own actions? And you come here asking for people? Fine, no people. If you don't like it, then deal with it." The call ended. Lanjia looked at the dead device, then rose and pushed open the office door. On the day he'd acquired this factory, huge funds had been poured in to convert the abandoned workshops into a modern mecha repair center. Beneath the surface, however, a hidden world hummed with life. 10 portable spirit tool production lines ran around the clock. Lanjia had fused Armor Beast Tribe technology with soul guidance methods, turning the factory's defenses into a fortress. Even high-tier spirit tool cannons were neutralized before their reserves drained. East Sea Legion, a bunch of weak-willed scum, Lanjia thought, contempt clear on his face. Every machine race cherished its pride, and the Armor Beast Tribe more than most. In countless bloody years, surviving forces had been tempered by battle. Only the strong survived. As a descendant of the Armor Beast Tribe, Lanjia's blood was proud and unyielding. The law of the jungle, the rule of strength, was absolute wherever he went. He walked through the brightly lit core of the underground factory. Machinery roared, and 10 production lines turned metal into precise components that would be assembled into spirit tools and sold across the Sun Moon Federation. To legions or private buyers, it made no difference to him. If others didn't like it, they could stop buying. In the East Sea Legion's information department, Sun Jing slammed the communication device onto the table and paced. His fury seemed almost physical. His curses sent the surrounding officers into silence, heads bowed to avoid attracting his ire. "Old Sun, don't aggravate yourself. Didn't we have contingency plans for this?" Shui Shuheng, minister of the information department, waited for the outburst to subside, then spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Contingency plans? For what?" Sun Jing turned on him, voice squeezed through clenched teeth. "Those 3 pilots are elites of our legion, gone without a trace, and that bastard Lanjia dared to insult me on the call. I can't just let this go." Shu Shuheng's expression shifted. Then suddenly, he snapped, "That's crossing the line, old Sun." The old minister's fury flashed like a tiger baring its fangs. Sun Jing's momentum faltered. Shui Shuheng's voice returned to a composed murmur as he set down his teacup and went on. "Calm down. Lanjia's behavior shows he has backing. Our intel indicates a systematic spirit tool operation like that isn't something a child could run on their own. Remember this, until we can confirm their true stance, treat a child as a child. That's the bottom line, the rule. If anyone breaks the rules, then nobody gets to play." Shui Shuheng's words carried the weight of experience. Sun Jing dared not challenge him when he was resolute. The old minister had been a fearsome presence in his youth, the sort who would have driven a whole brigade into a rival branch to make trouble. Since they placed their chosen representative in East Sea Academy, it suggests they don't want open conflict. "We acted too hastily," Shui Shuheng concluded. "Fine, have everyone in intelligence withdraw, and notify procurement to buy up every spirit tool they've released onto the market." Sun Jing wanted to argue, but faced with Shui Shuheng's steady authority, he could only nod. The old minister's decisions were rarely wrong. Rash action now would only make matters worse. Chapter 45. This plan will not work out. It's fate. "But Shui Shu, are we really just going to let it go?" Sun Jing couldn't suppress the reluctance in his voice. Shui Shuheng smiled faintly, a deep light flashing in his old eyes. Of course not. But Lan Jiao was right about one thing. Our East Sea Legion is like a sieve. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, Shrek. Shui Shuheng's cloudy gaze sharpened, a streak of bitter red in it. If we can't stop them directly, we accept them for now, let a tiger devour a wolf, and use that to root out the rot inside. Sun Jing wasn't in his position as deputy head of the Mecha department by accident. His mind was as clear as his rank. At Shui Shuheng's hint, he understood the implication immediately. A slow smile of cruel amusement tugged at his lips. You mean we use a borrowed knife to kill? Don't put it so bluntly, Shui Shuheng said. Call it mutually beneficial. The forces behind Lanjia can keep expanding their market and building capital. That'll hit Shrek Academy's spirit tool business hard. Shrek won't swallow that quietly. And as they move in, we can trace the cracks back into our own ranks. He sipped his tea, eyes glinting with calculation. He set the cup down, rose, and walked to the window, staring into the distance as if mapping out a battlefield. Sun Jing, you have to understand, our East Sea Legion is only nominally the Federation's legion. Factional infighting has never stopped. Shrek Academy's influence has spread too deep, right into our core decision-making. If we don't act, sooner or later the East Sea Legion, and maybe the entire Federation, will become Shrek's puppet. Sun Jing's fists clenched. He'd known the truth of Shui Shuheng's words, and that knowledge made him feel even more helpless. Shrek Academy's power was vast, woven into almost every corner of the Federation. How could they hope to oppose it? The Federation had set up the War God Hall to counter Shrek's Sea God Pavilion, but the high-ranking officials all knew the War God Hall was leaky and unreliable. So you mean we use the forces backing Lanjia to restrain Shrek? Sun Jing asked cautiously. Shui Shuheng turned back to him, eyes hard. Exactly. The forces behind Lanjia aren't simple. They established a spirit tool production line and pushed products into the market very quickly. No ordinary group could do that. Instead of making enemies of them, we should cooperate temporarily and use their strength to weaken Shrek's reach. Sun Jing was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. But will Lanjia's people cooperate? He was quite defiant earlier. Shui Shuheng smiled, a crafty expression easing his features. Lanjia is arrogant, yes, but not stupid. He acts boldly because he has powerful backers. Still, he can't ignore the East Sea Legion completely. If we offer him enough benefits, he'll consider working with us. Benefits? Sun Jing looked puzzled. What can we give him? Shui Shuheng stepped over and patted Sun Jing on the shoulder. We're the Federation's first fully established legion with a mecha department. What do you think we can offer? Sun Jing's eyes brightened as the implication sank in. As the Federation's first fully functional mecha department, the East Sea Legion possessed vast resources and influence, especially in spirit tools. Their technological reserves and production lines were among the best in the Federation. Those assets could be bargaining chips. You mean we could outsource mecha development and production to the forces behind Lanjia to secure their cooperation against Shrek? Sun Jing's voice dropped with excitement. Shui Shuheng nodded. Precisely. They obviously need spirit tool technology, otherwise they wouldn't set up production lines so fast. Our mecha and spirit tool tech is exactly what they want. If we're willing to share some technology, or even give them access to production lines, they'll be inclined to team up with us. Relief and worry warred in Sun Jing. But Shui Shu, if we share our technology, aren't we raising a tiger that might bite us later? What if they turn on us? Wouldn't that be worse in the long run? Shui Shuheng's smile hardened into something shrewd. You're right to worry. You can't catch a wolf without risking a child falling into harm's way. He knows what we want, and we know what they need. A mutual understanding is safest. We won't hand them everything. We'll trade carefully. He let his voice drift into something almost like an old man's lament. Our own Sun Moon Federation Research Institute still hasn't surpassed Shrek Academy or the Tang sect in some areas. If we can pay for scraps the Tang sect sells or find a sincere ally, then maybe we can break the stalemate. Shrek Academy, the Tang sect, even the Spirit Transfer Pagoda, these powers have roots here stretching back tens of thousands of years. How many still remember when the Sun Moon Empire dominated the continent? Shui Shuheng sounded like a veteran tiger going to reclaim lost ground. He wanted to sharpen old claws, replant loose fangs. He wanted the East Sea Legion and the Federation to regain their former glory. Looking at the resolve in Shui Shuheng's eyes, Sun Jing felt his own courage stir. Risky as the plan was, it might be the only way forward. Better to take the initiative than wait for death. I understand, Sun Jing said, taking a steadying breath. I'll carry out your plan. But for Lanjia's side, we'll need a proper intermediary to arrange the cooperation. Shui Shuheng nodded with approval. Good. All those decades as deputy head weren't wasted. Isn't there still a Chen Zhou at East Sea Academy? Perhaps that mysterious force planned this step before we did, and they planted Chen Zhou to expose themselves to us. A highly strategic opponent, Sun Jing murmured. If this plan succeeds, the Sun Moon Federation's glory will shine again, Shui Shuheng said softly. And if it fails, he let the sentence hang, then finished with a calm acceptance. Then it's fate. Chapter 46, Biding Your Time. Be a grandson before you become a grandfather. Shui Shuheng stood slowly, his eyes clouded but determined. The Sun Moon Empire had become the Sun Moon Federation. Several major legions had been infiltrated like sieves. Even research institutes, the War God Hall, and several major cities had Shrek Academy supporters planted inside. A flicker of resolve crossed Shui Shuheng's face. He walked to the window and stared into the distance as if weighing the Federation's future. His voice was low and steady, carrying the weight of authority. Sun Jing, we must be careful with this operation. Lanjia's backing is strong, but we don't really know their motives. We'll cooperate, but stay vigilant. Under no circumstances can we let them turn the tables on us. Sun Jing nodded, solemn. Understood, Shui Shu. I'll make the arrangements myself and ensure every step is airtight. Shui Shuheng patted Sun Jing's shoulder, relief softening his tone. Good. Hearing that puts me at ease. Remember, our aim isn't only to blunt Shrek's influence. We need to use this chance to root out the rot within and revitalize the East Sea Legion. Sun Jing drew in a breath, determination in his eyes. I won't fail you. Shui Shuheng sat back down, his gaze relaxing into the appearance of an old man. The future belongs to your generation. I, a remnant of the old era, can't stay forever on a ship that keeps moving forward. But there's one last thing I can do. Once more, I'll help you pull the nails out of this legion. Pull them all out. There was a pause. Then Shui Shuheng added almost to himself, there's an expert at East Sea Academy. When Chen Zhou returned home, he took the letter Yu Zhen had given him and read it over carefully. After thinking it through, he had a rough idea of what the East Sea Legion hoped to do with him. There were heroes in the world as plentiful as fish crossing a river. The Legion wanted to use his need for soul guidance technology knowledge and his capital to take a side and deploy his self-developed portable spirit tool series into the market. That would provoke Tang Sect and Shrek Academy, disturb the balance, and attract attention, letting the Legion avoid a head-on conflict while using the fallout to clean their own house and revive the East Sea Legion. If the Legion backed him, Chen Zhou wouldn't be an easy target for those who resented his lack of high-end combat power. East Sea Legion influence in East Sea City would force rivals to think twice. In the short term, he could raise capital and acquire rare soul guidance knowledge unavailable in ordinary libraries. It was a twofold win. Agree to it, Chen Zhou decided. He handed the letter to Lanjia, but his eyes glittered and a knowing smile spread across his face. We can't follow their plan blindly. If the East Sea Legion wants to use us against Shrek, they'll have to pay a price that lets us grow quickly. Lanjia skimmed the letter, brows knitting. Master, you mean... Though only 9, Chen Zhou's face took on the savage focus of a beast about to leap. He rose and looked out the window, imagining the future battlefield. It's tough meat, but it's still meat. Only by devouring it can we maximize our gains. Once our high-end combat strength appears, the initiative will naturally be ours. A fierce light ignited in Lanjia's eyes, melting his usually stern features into a smile. Very well. Your subordinate will start liquidating those ignorant merchants and quickly establish our own market. Having a clever subordinate was a comfort. Many things didn't require the master's direct effort. Chen Zhou nodded and added, and as for the 7 treasure glazed tile merchant guild, whatever they took, they'll have to cough it up for me. As an alchemist, one must endure humiliation when weak, but when strong, settle scores without delay. That was why alchemists were less popular than necromancers and witches. The former might use your father's corpse to turn you into a bomb. The latter were unpredictable and disliked by everyone, including themselves. After Lanjia left, Chen Zhou sat alone, fingertips tapping the table, mind racing. East Sea Legion's offer sounded like a win-win, but it carried hidden risks. Shrek Academy and the Tang sect's influence ran deep. Upsetting them wouldn't be easy. The Legion's internal problems were more complicated than they seemed. One wrong move, and he could become collateral in their infighting. I can't depend entirely on the East Sea Legion. I need my own trump cards, he murmured. He felt a twinge of helplessness, remembering how his soul origin had just been used to deplete the original energy amethyst. Reclaiming that energy would take time. Consider this biding my time, he told himself. I'll be a grandson before I try to be a grandfather. Stay low now, build strength, and only then take charge. Chen Zhou set his tone. Apart from a few overwhelmingly powerful forces, he could provoke almost anyone. With East Sea Legion endorsement, few would risk facing the Legion's fixed-mount spirit tool cannon just for a bite of profit that wasn't theirs. Beep, beep, beep. Just as Chen Zhou was about to go upstairs to further research integrating spirit tools and alchemy, his communication spirit tool rang. Hello, who is it? He answered. Wu Jiangkong, came the cold voice. Chen Zhou understood immediately. What is it, Teacher Wu? Chen Zhou, come to the classroom tomorrow morning. Don't be late. Wu Jiangkong's tone was emotionless. He didn't seem eager to make the call. Chen Zhou raised an eyebrow. Is there something specific, Teacher Wu? Please, just tell me. On the other end, Wu Jiangkong sighed and rubbed his temple. Though their philosophies often clashed, his responsibility as a teacher made him patient. Starting today, you'll have 1 day each week to cultivate on the Spirit Ascension platform of the Spirit Transfer Pagoda. Use it well. The Academy allocated funds to secure that spot for you. All right, Chen Zhou said. He accepted the arrangement, and Wu Jiangkong, satisfied, ended the call. Author's note, today is also a day of explosive updates. Thanks to Longyue, Fusheng Suiyu, and a big supporter represented by symbols, and thanks to all readers for their attention. The author will be releasing 5 explosive updates today. Chapter 47, Tilting Head. The next morning, Chen Zhou had to get up early if he wanted to take Fei Gu to the Spirit Ascension platform. The so-called Spirit Ascension platform was a failed experiment, but even as a failure, it held a temptation few spirit masters on Douluo continent could resist. Spirit Ascension, a miraculous power that could extend the lifespan of a soul spirit. And Fei Gu, of course, was that owl. Ever since the first mental rune had been built in his spiritual world, the night wind-carved owl had seemed to awaken. Now that it had been nourished by the original energy amethyst, it had become plump and fat. Chen Zhou let it out sometimes for a little air. The owl would flap its wings and chirp softly. Perched on his shoulder, Fei Gu had grown round and content. If Chen Zhou hadn't let it out occasionally to stretch its wings, he might have started to worry the bird had forgotten how to fly. All right, not today for flying about, Chen Zhou told it. Today, I'm giving you a chance to ascend. Soul spirits and spirit masters were linked by spirit. Fei Gu, tainted and transformed by the amethyst into a true night wind-carved owl, communicated with Chen Zhou easily enough. To everyone else, though, Chen Zhou looked odd, a young man walking with a plump owl on his shoulder, murmuring to it. Passers-by glanced, whispered, and smirked. Chen Zhou didn't care. His mind was on the Spirit Ascension platform. By the time he reached East Sea Academy, class had already started. Tang Wulin had barely finished his morning run and breakfast and rushed into the classroom to find Shi Xie there, red-faced, chasing a surprisingly round owl across the desks. A few minutes earlier, Shi Xie had entered and seen Chen Zhou sitting in his usual seat, engrossed in a book. He muttered to himself, picked a seat, and waited for Tang Wulin. Then a soft flapping sound caught his attention. A plump, oddly expressive bird had landed on the desk in front of him. Is that an owl? Shi Xie murmured, surprised. He reached out, wanting to feel its feathers, but before his fingers could touch it, the bird fluttered away and landed on the other side of the table. It cocked one foot, leaned in, and tilted its round face to one side, watching Xie intently. Something about the way it cocked its head made Xie's face twitch. The expression looked almost human, mocking. He frowned. Before he could stop himself, he lunged, hands snapping to grab it, but the owl was faster than it looked. With a single flap, it slipped up and away, landing elsewhere on the desk and tilting its head again, watching him with big, bright eyes. "Goo!" the owl trilled like it was laughing. Heat rose to Xi's face. He cursed out loud, embarrassed at himself for being bested by a bird. The owl, meanwhile, seemed to relish the game, tilting its head as if to say, "You can't catch me." Xi's temper flared. He jumped onto the desk and lunged again, this time using a trace of spirit power to try to match the owl's evasive speed. But the Nightwind carved owl, enhanced by the original energy Amethyst, was no ordinary owl. It was blindingly fast and effortlessly slipped out of his grasp every time. It teased him by skimming low over his head, perching on the windowsill, then darting back to taunt him with that tilted, impish gaze. By the time Tang Wulin burst into the classroom, Xie was still scrambling after it. Fei Gu's round eyes lit up at the sight of a new arrival, and it swooped toward Tang Wulin like a child seeking attention. Xie saw his chance when the owl's speed seemed to slow and dove after it. Tang Wulin barely had time to react. The owl's playful face came toward him and then suddenly pulled up, and Xie, still charging, crashed straight into Tang Wulin. A loud thud filled the room. Both boys staggered back, hands to their heads, wincing. The impact snapped Xie out of his fury. He rubbed his forehead and glared helplessly at Tang Wulin, who gave him a sheepish look. "Xie, what are you doing?" Tang Wulin asked, half amused, half exasperated. A chorus of goo-goo erupted then, and everyone turned to see Fei Gu perched on Chen Zhou's desk, wings tucked around its round belly, feet wobbling. Its intelligent eyes were bright and amused. The sound felt like laughter to Xie, and his face flushed an even deeper red. He pointed at the owl, too furious to speak. Chen Zhou glanced up at Tang Wulin, then went back to his book, as if none of it had happened. Maybe the bird was noisy for him, because he gave it a casual flick. Fei Gu described an arc through the air and landed neatly on the windowsill, cocking its head at Xie once more, eyes shining with mockery. Chapter 48, Spirit Ascension Platform. Xie ground his teeth in anger, but he knew chasing after the owl would only make him look worse. He forced himself to breathe deeply, tamped down the fury, took his seat, and sat glaring at Chen Zhou. Every member of Zero Class who entered the classroom caught sight of his flushed face and the occasional murderous glare aimed at Chen Zhou. Gu Yue, Zhang Yangzi, and Wang Jingxi watched the strange scene with curiosity. The five of them, the so-called elite among EC Academy's first-year students, had all been shaken by Chen Zhou's recent actions. If not for Wu Jiangkong's steadying influence, their morale might have collapsed. An elementalist had been outplayed at elemental manipulation. A proud bloodline user had been thoroughly suppressed. An agility attack spirit master had had every move anticipated. What terrified them wasn't an undefeatable enemy, but an opponent who could beat them using their own strongest methods. Then someone noticed the small, chubby owl perched on Chen Zhou's shoulder. It had its back to the class, then, with a playful motion, turned and blinked at Xie. The look in the owl's big round eyes was unmistakable, and in an instant the three imaginations ran wild as they replayed the scene in their heads. Guyo stifled a laugh. Zhang Yangzi and Wang Jingxi shot one another a glance and soon followed. Xishi's face darkened further. He glared at the trio and muttered, "What are you laughing at? If you'd been mocked by a fat bird, you'd be furious too." Guyue shook her head and sat down. "Xie, you're an agility attack spirit master. You can't even catch an owl? That's not like you." Xishi's expression hardened. "That fat bird isn't an ordinary owl. It's unbelievably quick. I think it's Chen Zhou's soul spirit." At that remark, the classroom fell silent. Soul spirits manifesting in physical form wasn't unheard of, but one so intelligent, one that could taunt its spirit master, was almost unheard of. Chen Zhou simply kept his head down, flipping pages in the book in his hands, as if oblivious to everyone. The owl cocked its head, scanned the room with bright round eyes, and gave a soft coo-coo as if announcing itself. Its manner was sprightly, even provocative, and something about it made people wonder whether it was just an ordinary soul spirit. Guya frowned and sent out a subtle probing of her own. Her mental force and sensitivity to spirit power were exceptional, and she could normally perceive soul spirits easily. Even so, she couldn't fully discern the owl's true nature. A faint, mysterious aura shrouded it. Chen Zhou, she asked at last, what exactly is your soul spirit? Chen Zhou glanced at her once, expression indifferent, then returned to his book, as if he hadn't heard. His nonchalance made Guyue awkward, but she knew this was simply Chen Zhou's way. Shishi snorted and muttered under his breath. He's acting like it's nothing. It's just a fat bird. The owl turned at once and fixed Shishi with a direct stare, then gave a sharper coo. Shishi took an involuntary step back and then scowled, embarrassed. You fat bird, don't think I won't teach you a lesson, he said through gritted teeth, voice threaded with guilty bravado. Unfazed, the owl flapped up and settled on Chen Zhou's shoulder again, looking at Shishi with impish intelligence, as if wondering why the defeated man dared to threaten it. The classroom air grew awkward. Everyone fell quiet, leaving Chen Zhou to his book. At that moment, the door opened and Wu Jiankong walked in. He scanned the room, eyes pausing briefly on Chen Zhou and the owl, and announced bluntly, no practical combat training today. We're going to the Spirit Transfer Pagoda. The 5 bewildered students exchanged looks. Chen Zhou, who apparently already knew the plan, murmured something to the owl and followed near the back of the group. Wu Jiankong didn't stop there. As he led them out, he explained, starting today, you'll have 1 day each week to cultivate on the Spirit Ascension platform at the Spirit Transfer Pagoda. Cherish this chance. The Academy arranged it specially for you. Wu Jiankong's brief explanation left the others wide-eyed. The Spirit Ascension platform had begun as an experimental project of the Spirit Transfer Pagoda, its original goal to push forward research into artificial soul spirits and, if possible, raise their level through controlled ascension. The pagoda invested heavily, hoping the platform would produce technological breakthroughs and a new generation of powerful artificial spirits. But early experiments fell short of expectations. The platform could help raise some artificial soul spirits, but the results were inconsistent and often marginal. Researchers realized that relying solely on the platform to reliably elevate soul spirits was far trickier than they'd hoped. Rather than abandon the project, the pagoda revamped it. They expanded and optimized its functions, integrating the continent's most advanced spirit tool technology, the collective wisdom of experienced spirit masters, and the concentrated efforts of researchers. The Spirit Ascension platform evolved into something more than an experimental ground. It became a unique training realm. Entering the platform felt like stepping into another world. Though fraught with challenges, the platform provided protective guarantees for its cultivators' safety. Spirit masters could test themselves against various spirit beasts, gain practical combat experience, and refine their own abilities. Most importantly, the platform carried the chance, however uncertain, of triggering a spirit ascension for a soul spirit. A 10-year soul spirit might leap to a 100-year lifespan. A 100-year one might ascend toward 1,000. The effect was not guaranteed, and the higher a soul spirit's current lifespan, the lower the chance of ascension, but even the possibility made the platform a coveted cultivation site for spirit masters. As Wu Jiankong finished, Tang Wulin and Gu Yu's eyes brightened, though for different reasons. Each found the opportunity valuable in their own way. Chapter 49, Donghai City Soul Transmission Tower. The Donghai City Soul Transmission Tower dwarfed the one in Alai City, where Chen Zhou had trained. As one of the branch towers of the Soul Transmission Pagoda, the 18 great towers here were collectively called the 18 Heavenly Pillars, a symbol of the pagoda's supreme status on the continent. From a distance, the tower dominated the skyline, hundreds of stories tall, more than 400 meters in height, still the unmistakable landmark even among Donghai City's skyscrapers. Its octagonal base covered a vast area, and every 10 stories the structure tapered inward until it rose to a spire at the top. Just standing beneath it, people felt a majestic, cloud-piercing presence. If a single-branch tower was like this, Chen Zhou wondered how imposing the headquarters, known as the Heavenly Spirit Pagoda, must be. He had heard it lay in Shrek City, at the very heart of the continent. Shrek City was not only the pagoda's home base, but also one of the core cities of the Federation, rivaled only by Ming City in the west. As a gathering place for innumerable powerhouses and elites, Shrek City's Heavenly Spirit Pagoda was said to be on an utterly different scale from any branch tower. The repository of cultivation resources, ancient inheritance, and the dreams of soul masters across the land. Standing beneath the Donghai Tower, Chen Zhou felt both reverence and a private itch of curiosity. Sooner or later, he would visit those forces that had endured for tens of thousands of years and see for himself what the greatest truly meant. As they climbed the steps to the main entrance, Director of Education Long Hengsu was waiting. He stepped forward to greet Wu Zhangkong and widened his smile when he saw Chen Zhou. "Teacher Wu," he said warmly. "Director Long," Wu replied with a curt nod. He kept his face impassive. Long Hengsu ignored the curt tone and waved them inside. "Come with me." The first floor's interior dazzled them. Dark gold stone tiled the floor, its natural veins gleaming. Massive pillars held up a dome dozens of meters high. Colorful murals covered the pillars and dome in breathtaking detail, scenes of landscapes and figures that seemed to tell a long, continuous tale. Wu Zhangkong pointed to one of the murals and explained, "These murals record the deeds of the first pagoda master, the legendary soul master spirit Ice Douluo Huoyuhao, the inventor of soul spirits, and how he led humanity against the soul tide. What we see here is only a portion. The murals spread across all 18 branch towers form a complete story. At the pagoda headquarters, you can see the final great battle, Spirit Ice Douluo versus the God Emperor. After that battle, he vanished and never reappeared. Rumor has it he ultimately prevailed. The beast god Golden-Eyed Black Dragon King also disappeared afterward." The students listened as if transported back to that age, feeling the bravery and wisdom imprinted in the images. Long Hengshu guided them deeper, floor after floor, unfolding different episodes and legends. Each mural seemed to tell another piece of history. From the side, Wu Zhangkong watched the students' reactions. This visit was meant not only to teach history, but to kindle their yearning for the Soul Master path. Chen Zhou, however, lingered at the back and looked bored. History can be a mirror of rises and falls, he thought, but only if the history is real. Murals, more often than not, were glorifications. Besides, not long ago, when he had entered the world's core as a soul body, the true historical fragments stored in the golden ancient tree had revealed themselves to him. Those memories left him with a very different picture than the one celebrated on these walls. He studied the painted, continent-shaking image of Spirit Ice Douluo Huoyuhao, and a wry smile touched his lips. He had not sifted every memory from the golden ancient tree, but the period tied to the Sun of Fortune, the world's cores chosen, meant to ensure Douluo Star's continued development, was carved deep into the world's memory. Even without trying, Chen Zhou had absorbed those truths. Shameful tales of spiritual castration, betrayals of masters, and the annihilation of ancestral lines, moments of recognizing enemies as fathers and of forgetting the kindness that raised you. Episodes of being trained like a dog by a supreme deity. Once he had admired Huo Yuhao as an innovator who created soul spirits. After seeing the unvarnished record, that admiration curdled into contempt. The man had been pulled along by schemers, compromised by the daughter of a god king, involved in events that led to the deaths of his teachers, then later reconciled with a father and taken to the god realm to enjoy blessings. Hardly the unblemished hero the murals proclaimed. Chen Zhou sneered inwardly but showed nothing. The Pagoda and Shrek Academy had long ago polished and rewritten history into a legitimizing myth. Exposing the truth would gain him nothing and bring unnecessary trouble. He glanced at the small creature perched on his shoulder, Chen Gugu, who seemed uninterested in the murals, tilting his head and regarding Chen Zhou with round, inquisitive eyes, as if asking what he was thinking. Chen Zhou patted Chen Gugu's head. "Nothing, just a little bored," he murmured. Chen Gugu chirped twice in reply, then resumed his curious exploration of the surroundings. Long Hengsu's voice called the students back to attention. Seeing Chen Zhou's distant expression, he smiled knowingly. "The first time I came to the 18 Heavenly Pillars, I felt the same curious awe," he said. "After a while it fades, but the murals in each tower are still worth studying." Wu Zhangkong's voice cut through the reverence with a cool reminder. Focus. When you go up to the Spirit Ascension platform later, you will have only yourselves to rely on. Chapter 50, Brainwave Connection. If even Chen Zhou could run into trouble, then Tang Wulin and his group might be in danger too. Wu Zhangkong knew Chen Zhou well. He wasn't rigid. When something interested him, he showed a very different side. Wise, sharp, decisive, curious, and with keen combat awareness. Wu Zhangkong had to admit that a student like Chen Zhou was among the most talented on the entire Douluo Star, and as a former Shrek Inner Court disciple, he felt a pang of inferiority. "Teacher, aren't you coming in with us?" Tang Wulin asked in surprise. Wu Zhangkong blinked and refocused on his students, slightly reassured. He explained seriously, only spirit masters below 4 ring can enter the primary Spirit Ascension platform. Long Hengshu, the dean of students, nodded with a smile. "Don't worry, we'll monitor you from outside. If there's any danger, withdraw immediately. We'll explain the precautions now." Led by Long Hengshu and Wu Zhangkong, they boarded an elevator that went down instead of up. A slight weightlessness told them they were sinking deeper underground, though how deep was impossible to tell. The Spirit Transfer Pagoda lived up to its reputation as the continent's premier organization. A project like this must have cost an astronomical sum. The elevator had no numbers. It took 3 minutes before it stopped. They stepped into a spacious hall, staffed by a dozen people. Behind the staff were numerous metal-structured corridors. Long Hengshu produced a uniquely designed card and handed it to one of the attendants. The attendant said nothing, simply gestured for them to follow and led them down a passageway. After walking a few dozen meters, they entered another elevator. This time it descended for only a dozen seconds before stopping. When they stepped out, they were in a circular, epitaph metal-walled chamber. Around the room, a ring of massive spirit guidance screens flickered with images, various green worlds that resembled dense jungles. The attendant turned to them and said, "There are 6 slots to enter the primary Spirit Ascension platform. There's no time limit. When you can no longer withstand the dangers inside, press your distress signal device and you'll return here. Now I'll explain the precautions." The Spirit Ascension platform was a mysterious space the Spirit Transfer Pagoda had been developing for over 1,000 years. It was another world of sorts, integrating top-tier spatial technology with spirit power, neither entirely virtual nor entirely real. Data and virtual constructs behaved according to real feedback, making the platform a hybrid domain, part simulation, part tangible experience. For Tang Wulin, Gu Yu, and the others, this first encounter with brainwave connection felt both novel and intimidating. The attendant continued patiently. The Spirit Ascension platform is a hybrid space. The primary platform you are entering is mostly virtual, and your lives will not be directly endangered, but that doesn't mean you can be careless. Your core task inside is to survive. The longer you survive, the more benefits you'll gain. Second, don't think the platform is absolutely safe. Even though this is a brainwave connection, a massive impact can seriously affect your brainwaves and endanger your life. If you feel you've exceeded your tolerance, press the distress signal and exit immediately. Understood? The 5 young students in the front row grew more excited as they listened. They exchanged looks, eyes bright with eager anticipation. Tang Wulin and Gu Yue, hearing of the platform for the first time, were filled with longing and curiosity. What would a brainwave connection feel like? Only Chen Zhou frowned. He wanted to analyze the mechanism on the spot. According to the spirit research notes he kept, spirit linked to the bloodline and genes carved into one's bones, the manifestation of the mind, the essence of the soul. What did brainwaves have to do with it? Even if the platform used brainwave frequencies to access another world and then constructed a quasi-real body there, how would the benefits transfer back to the real body? Noticing Chen Zhou's expression, Long Hengshu stepped closer and asked quietly, "What's wrong, Chen Zhou?" Chen Zhou waved his hand, summoned Fat Gu Fei Gu back into his body, and muttered, "Dr. Long, are you sure these attendants are reliable? I get the feeling this one hasn't had any on-the-job training." Long Hengshu glanced at the attendant, who was still addressing the 5 children, and hadn't noticed Chen Zhou's aside. He hushed him. "Watch your words." Long Hengshu didn't think there was a real problem, but he knew Chen Zhou's knowledge sometimes exceeded his own. He told him in a low voice, "Don't worry about that for now. Your task this time is to get used to the environment and how the Spirit Ascension platform functions. The Academy can provide one slot per week. For your first entry, don't worry about gains. Safety comes first." Chen Zhou shrugged and nodded under Long Hengsu's concerned gaze. Since the dean said so, there was little else to argue. The attendant finished the briefing and pressed a button. 6 metal cabinets slid out from the adjacent wall. They were horizontal, each with a human-shaped recess inside, resembling a coffin. "Everyone, lie inside," the attendant instructed. They obeyed. The cold metal sharpened their focus. One by one, small suction electrodes emerged and attached themselves to various parts of their bodies, fitting perfectly. "It's about to begin. Relax your whole body. There will be slight discomfort during the scan. It will pass if you bear with it." The cabinets slid closed and darkness enveloped them. Chen Zhou concentrated his mental force and felt the changes in his body. Tingling spread through his limbs and bones as if currents ran through him. His inner spirit power and bloodline were being stimulated. Fluctuations arose and the tingling intensified until it felt like his body was being numbed. A special fluctuation came from his brain. "Here it comes," he thought. Chen Zhou's spiritual body rubbed his small hands in anticipation, drawing in mental force, a specialized medium connected to the soul by the brain's spiritual bridge. So that's how they did it. He let go and followed the fluctuation into a deep sleep. When he opened his eyes again, the metal cabinet was gone and the tingling had vanished. He looked at his hand and saw a small metal device attached to the back of it, a distinct red button set into the surface. A distress signal? Chapter 51, A Bold Idea. Chen Zhou raised an eyebrow. Then, to confirm his guess, he summoned Fei Gu, Fat Gu. Gu Gu, Gu Gu. Fei Gu appeared in the unfamiliar environment, excited. It flapped its wings, circled Zhou once, and landed on his shoulder, tilting its round, big head to take in the new surroundings. Chen Zhou swept his vast mental force over himself and Fei Gu, confirming his suspicion. His soul spirit was intact. His body, however, had changed. Under the influence of the original energy Amethyst, his flesh was continuously and autonomously drawing in the world's spiritual energy, converting it into pure energy and storing it. Half of that energy fed his cultivation, transforming into alchemy energy. Pure energy kept flowing through him, naturally nourishing his body. In theory, his body was evolving every moment, but right now his form felt fixed. His soul felt somewhat ethereal, as if separated from the world by a thin veil, yet he could drift along that veil, like a bridge between realms. Interesting. Chen Zhou smiled, shook his head, and started walking casually in one direction. Since he was on the Spirit Ascension platform, even if he couldn't achieve Spirit Ascension here, he would at least let Fei Gu improve. The area before him was a primeval forest, full of life and extraordinarily dense spiritual energy. Chen Zhou breathed it in and couldn't help admiring the place. The concentration of spirit energy here far exceeded the outside world, several times denser than what he'd felt cultivating at East Sea Academy. For a spirit master, this was an ideal environment. Gu Gu, Fei Gu chirped on his shoulder, wings fluttering as it took in everything with curious round eyes. Chen Zhou patted its head and whispered, "Don't run off. This isn't a playground." Because the Spirit Ascension platform was essentially a world, it obeyed the laws a world should have. The spirit beasts placed here would follow instinct, seeking advantage, avoiding danger. If that held true, Chen Zhou sat cross-legged and summoned the original energy Amethyst. Energy convergence. The modified spirit ability was released smoothly. The Amethyst floated above him, rotating slowly, its surface rippling like water. The surrounding spiritual energy, like iron filings towards a magnet, surged toward him. A funnel-shaped siphon formed above the Amethyst. The Amethyst transformed the gathered energy into pale purple particles that drifted down, showering Chen Zhou and Fei Gu. Chen Zhou felt a pleasant, freeing sensation, as if every pore opened to drink in the energy. Spirit power circulated through him and was perfectly absorbed and converted. Fei Gu on his shoulder chirped with delight. It seemed plumper from the nourishment, its feathers smoother and shinier. Chen Zhou closed his eyes, sensing the steady rise in spirit power, and thought, this Spirit Ascension platform really lives up to its name. Just a little time here, and the gain far exceeds the outside world. But he didn't linger in the pleasure. Caution in an unfamiliar place was essential. A spirit ascension platform was ripe with unknown dangers, especially hidden spirit beasts in the depths of the forest, creatures that wouldn't show themselves unless something drew them. Chen Zhou retracted his focus and remained alert. Back at the Spirit Transfer Pagoda, primary spirit ascension platform, Zone 5, Long Hungsu stared at one of the observation screens in astonishment. Chen Zhou was sitting under a crystal, cultivating, and the dense energy around him seemed to congeal into something almost liquid. He knew Chen Zhou was a prodigy, but not like this. The energy here converged as if being forced into a single point. Wu Jiankong, standing nearby, frowned, and then his eyes suddenly narrowed. He barked, "Foolish!" Long Hungshu jumped, surprised. "What, Teacher Wu?" Wu pointed at Chen Zhou's screen. "Do you know what he's trying to do?" Before Long could answer, Wu continued. "He's not just siphoning the platform's energy for himself. He's attracting the spirit beasts living in this world." Long Hungshu stared at the screen, alarmed. Inside the platform, as expected, as soon as Chen Zhou began drawing energy, there was a rustle from the forest. His perception was keen. He immediately sensed several powerful auras closing in. "They're here," he said softly, opening his eyes. Fei Gu stiffened, its eyes wide and alert, wings spread a little to fly at a moment's notice. Chen Zhou stood, withdrew the original energy amethyst into his body, and calmly scanned the encroaching area. A fight was coming. That was one of the reasons he'd come. Low growls rose from the trees. A pack of gray wolves with glowing green eyes had formed a semicircle, slowly tightening around him. The leading wolf, man-high and broad, looked almost crazed from the dense spiritual energy. Its eyes glowed bright red. All creatures sought advantage and avoided risk, but greed could override caution when the prize was great. The pack had been drawn by the dense energy that had gathered over Chen Zhou. Their eyes flashed with hunger. They already considered him prey. With the amethyst retracted, the attracted energy dissipated, but the ground around Chen Zhou still held the densest concentration in the world. He studied the approaching Mukui wolves with calm, sharp eyes and a small smile playing at his lips. The Wolf King let out a sharp howl. "Roar," he seemed to command, and a dozen adult male wolves lunged at Chen Zhou. The Mukui wolves were famed in records, a green glow in their eyes that let them see in darkness as if it were daylight, incredible speed, and deadly pack tactics. Once they targeted prey, they fought without mercy. Chen Zhou didn't panic. If anything, he felt a surge of excitement. "Come on," he murmured. As the wolves closed in, Chen Zhou's voice hardened. Alchemy, Chapter 52, I Don't Keep Useless Things, Earth Mire. Chen Zhou poured his alchemy energy, spirit power refined into alchemical force, into the earth. He slammed his palms into the ground, and the soil beneath him shuddered. What had been solid earth tore open as if by an invisible hand, softening into a fetid, sucking swamp. The mud churned and spread, a putrid stink filling the air. The Mukwai wolves that had been charging found the ground disappear under their feet. Their paws sank instantly into the mire. They couldn't advance. Panic turned their howls frantic as they struggled against the mire's binding, but the more they lashed about, the deeper they went. Chen Zhou stood at the edge of the swamp, watching the trapped gray wolves with cold eyes and the faintest curl at the corner of his mouth. He didn't move to finish them off. He watched, as if savoring their futile struggles. The alpha wolf snapped. With a roar, it hurled its massive body upward, far larger and more powerful than ordinary Mukui wolves, muscles coiling and launching it like a living projectile toward Chen Zhou. A cold light slid across Chen Zhou's eyes. He raised his right hand slowly. Bubbles rose from the mud pit, numerous and deliberate. Alchemy, surging waves. Water surged within the mire, erupting like a geyser and smashing into the alpha wolf in midair. The wolf's body was slammed down, sucked back into the muck. The mire swallowed it. Its powerful limbs frantically clawed, but every motion only dragged it deeper. Chen Zhou watched the alpha wolf's struggles without pity. He raised his hand again, the mud stilled under his command, waiting for his next move. "Cuckoo!" Fat Gu chirped from Chen Zhou's shoulder, excitement fluttering through the small bird. Its round eyes were fixed on the trapped pack, bright with curiosity. Chen Zhou patted its head and murmured, Don't rush, the show's just begun. Although the wolves were trapped, their vitality was stubborn. They wouldn't die quickly, and Chen Zhou had no intention of letting them live. He needed them for something else. Alchemy, water vapor dispersion. At Chen Zhou's call, water vapor rose from the mire. The churning mud solidified in places, sealing the wolves further into the swamp. The air grew thick and humid, carrying a suffocating, metallic scent. The Mukwai wolves flailed desperately. Each attempt to break free only drove them deeper. Chen Zhou drew more spiritual energy, circulating elements through his body. He was preparing the final stage. Alchemy. Water flows from the source. Frost solidifies. The lingering vapor condensed into tiny ice crystals that drifted down, settling into the wolves' fur. For a moment, their alertness spiked. Sensing danger, they tried to back away, to fight free, but the mire held them fast. Chen Zhou spread his fingers. A frigid aura leapt from the air and metastasized over the trapped wolves. Those tiny crystals expanded over hides and paws like an invisible lattice, binding them in the surrounding mud in an icy prison. Frost flowers bloomed, life turned to soil, spirit power to nourishment, and existence paid as the cost. The wolves' howls faded into hoarse, terrified cries as their body heat drained away. Their movements slowed. Kinetic energy and life were leached by the spreading frost. Chen Zhou's expression stayed hard. He had a purpose. These wolves would become sustenance to extend Fei Gu, fast life, and strengthen it. "Fei Gu, go finish them," he said softly. "Ku." The little bird cocked its head, tilting its gaze toward the nearly lifeless wolves, then back to Chen Zhou. Its round eyes gleamed with a curious intelligence. The thought came through their bond. "You could have killed them yourself. Why make me do it?" "You can understand that I don't keep useless things," Chen Zhou replied seriously. He inhaled slowly, watching the frost cling to the pack. He had the power to end them instantly, of that he was certain, but he wanted Fei Gu to grow. Strength wasn't just about what one could do, it was about learning to use power to its fullest. Trials were necessary for a true soul spirit to mature. Chen Zhou suspected that any soul spirit born from an original energy amethyst would be affected by the authority of creation, just as Fei Gu had been, so the little creature needed experience. Fei Gu, which had once been smaller and scrawny, now looked rounder, more layers of fat padding its body. It seemed to understand. With a flurry of wings, it launched from Chen Zhou's shoulder, wings whispering through the humid air as it flew toward the trapped wolves. The surviving wolves still tried to resist, but their strength was sapped and irrelevant now. Fei Gu darted among them, a small, eager predator moving toward its meal, the culmination of Chen Zhou's plan to turn life into power for those that mattered. Chapter 53, A Cry Through Millennia. Go. Give them a lesson. At Chen Zhou's command, Chen Gugu spread its wings and dove. Its body shimmered with a faint glow, as if drawing energy from the space between heaven and earth. With Chen Zhou's support, Chen Gugu's power leapt to a new level. Though it was a soul spirit, its spirit beast gene came from a creature extinct for thousands of years, the night wind carved owl. The carved owl looked clumsy and almost cute when calm, ignoring anything that wasn't part of its routine. But when roused, it was a ruthless raptor, lightning fast, razor-beaked, and lethal. Now Chen Gugu's speed seemed blessed by some hidden force. Its form carved a graceful arc through the air, and it dove toward the trapped Mukui wolves. The pack felt the pressure from above, and panic rose in their chests. "Go," Chen Zhou murmured, eyes fixed on the descending spirit. Chen Gugu struck amid a swirl of wind. Its claws flashed like light as they pinned one of the struggling wolves. A single peck from its beak shattered the wolf's skull. A faint, wondrous glow flowed from that 10-year-old Mukui wolf and into Chen Zhou. The energy amethyst suspended in midair flickered. Chen Gugu seemed to draw some benefit from it and grew even fiercer. The death wasn't merciful, but it drew the others' attention. The alpha howled angrily, rallying what strength it could, but the pack, already bound by frost and trapped in mud, could only flail and groan. Gugu, its ancient gene stirred. Chen Gugu's fierce, crimson eyes fixed on its next target. As it intensified its attack, the wolves' morale crumbled. Chen Gugu circled on the wind, using speed to perform quick strikes and vanish before the wolves could counter. Each blow sent a head tumbling as easily as a feather. Numbers meant nothing against its onslaught. Those stuck in the mud howled in despair, straining uselessly at the earthen prison. Not bad, Chen Zhou said softly, excitement and expectation in his voice. He knew this was as much training for Chen Gugu as it was a fight. The Alpha, fueled by fury, could not remain passive. It emitted a powerful aura and tried to rally the survivors. But each kill only fed Chen Gugu, making it stronger. After another wolf fell, Chen Gugu cried out in triumph, eyes bright. No longer merely the cute little companion it had been, it had become a predator, pecking at fresh meat and relishing the hunt. As Chen Gugu closed in on a wolf near the Alpha, roots and vines burst from the mud, the Alpha itself. Leader could not watch its pack slaughtered one by one. Roots tore at the earth, freeing the Alpha from its icy prison. A pale green lifelight flared in its eyes as it fixed its hate on the aerial attacker and began rallying the others to tear the owl apart. The Alpha's demeanor had shifted. The long-simmering rage was now pure, blind ferocity. "Gugu, I believe you can do it," Chen Zhou said, tone tightening as he watched. The Alpha lowered its head and, with a roar, charged. It knew that biting the owl to death was the only chance, however small, that the tribe had left. The sight of torn carcasses and spilled blood had ignited the beast's fury into a killing madness. Chen Gugu looked down at the leaping wolf and flashed a confident smile. It didn't dodge, it welcomed the challenge. "Gugu!" A ripple of air answered its cry. The night wind-carved owl had always been a child of the wind, and even now, Chen Gugu called to that element. The surrounding air tightened and condensed into sharp wind blades. Under Chen Gugu's control, they shot outward like swords toward the Alpha and the remaining wolves. The Alpha refused to be cut down. Pale green light shimmered as a dozen vines thrust from the soil, and the Alpha lunged with blistering speed. It leaped, jaws wide, fangs gleaming. Just as they closed on the spot where Chen Gugu had been, the owl's form vanished, as if merged with the wind. The Alpha sank to earth, jaws snapping at nothing, and crashed to the ground with a dull thud. "Gugu!" came the cry from above. Chen Gugu reappeared, hovering over the Alpha, wings beating gently. Its eyes glittered with a cunning amusement, as if mocking the wolf's futile strike. Chapter 54, Special 4. The Mukui Wolf King roared in fury and lunged again for Fei Gu, but every strike missed. Fei Gu's speed was like a gust of wind, impossible to trap. The Mukui wolves struck by the wind blade howled miserably. The slicing gusts had torn them, blood staining the forest floor. The pack's numbers dwindled, and the surviving wolves began to retreat, realizing they were outmatched. "Awoe!" Despair flickered in the Wolf King's eyes. It knew its pack could not escape, but it refused to give up and threw itself at Fei Gu one last time, trying to buy its pack a chance. Fei Gu gave it no opportunity. Its wings beat violently, and a massive wind blade formed, flying at the Wolf King faster than the beast could react. The blade cleaved the creature in two. It shrieked as blood spouted, and its body collapsed, still. With their leader dead, the rest of the Mukui wolves lost all will to fight. They whimpered and fled, but Fei Gu would not let them go. Another flap of its wings sent several wind blades after them, and soon all the surviving wolves lay still. The battle ended. Fei Gu descended slowly, eyes bright with victory. It turned, looked at Chen Zhou, and let out a proud cry as if showing off the result to its master. Chen Zhou smiled and stepped forward to pat the plump owl's head. "Well done, Fei Gu," he murmured. Fei Gu cooed twice in response, its large round eyes shining with pride. Chen Zhou's attention moved to the fallen wolves. Light clustered over the Mukui Wolf King's corpse and formed a bright mass that rose into the pristine energy Amethyst hovering above. The Amethyst, which had been inert until now, absorbed the light, purified it, and fed it back to Chen Zhou and Fei Gu. Chen Zhou felt Fei Gu grow noticeably larger. He thought back. When he bonded Fei Gu in Aolai City, the night wind-carved owl had been barely 200 years old. Even with the Amethyst's special properties, most of its changes had been subtle, until now. This first battle on the Spirit Ascension platform had truly pushed Fei Gu forward. "Not bad. You didn't charge in recklessly, used your advantage to win," Chen Zhou said, rubbing the owl's soft feathers. Fei Gu ruffled its wings in satisfaction. The process of absorbing spiritual energy, guided by the amethyst, had plumped the small, palm-sized bird into the robust, slightly oversized owl it had become, hence the nickname Fat Gu. It cooed again, proud and alert. Chen Zhou cast his gaze around. The forest had settled back into an eerie calm, as if nothing had happened. The smell of blood and the scattered corpses were the only reminders of the recent fight. "Let's go, Fei Gu. We keep moving." He stepped deeper into the woods. Fei Gu hopped onto his shoulder, braced itself, and began scanning their surroundings with vigilant eyes. Far away, in the Spirit Transfer Pagoda on the primary Spirit Ascension platform, Zone 5, Wu Jiankong and Long Hengshu watched the scene in amazement. Chen Zhou's timing and combat sense, minimizing danger while exploiting openings, had been flawless. Fei Gu's performance stunned them both. Soul spirits rarely fought so decisively unless their masters were already powerful and had completed spirit ascension for their spirits. How had a two-ring spirit grandmaster produced such a developed soul spirit so quickly? Wu Jiankong remembered the night wind carved owl from his days at Shrek Academy and couldn't reconcile that image with what he was seeing now. There were too many mysteries around Chen Zhou. But thinking of Lan Jia and the recent rise of purple armor in Donghai City, Wu felt reassured. Major backing could explain unusual abilities. With that in mind, he returned to the screen, studying Chen Zhou's every move. Chen's fighting style, his tactics, even his soul spirit hinted at a new direction for spirit masters. As a disciple of the Candle Dragon Douluo, Wu valued practical combat experience and was eager to learn from different approaches. He had no shame in taking lessons from Chen Zhou. The boy had never quite seemed like a mere 9-year-old. Inside the platform, Chen Zhou had no idea he was being observed. He pressed on through the vast forest with Fei Gu at his shoulder. He could feel other powerful auras hidden among the trees, some far stronger than the Mukwai Wolf King. "Fei Gu, be careful from here on," he whispered, eyes sweeping the shadows. Fei Gu cooed twice and focused its gaze, ready for whatever lay ahead. Chapter 55. Next, I can only try my best to be the wall in front of you. The Spirit Ascension platform belonged to another world, but no matter. This place's ecological balance had already reached a critical point. Spirit beasts would inevitably flock here when they smelled blood, and the spiritual energy concentrated here was far stronger than in ordinary regions. Chen Zhou was no fool. His alchemy energy was tied to his spirit power cultivation. He theoretically had as much alchemy energy as spirit power. But Chen Zhou was only a spirit grandmaster. Even with the heaven and earth refining meditation method devised by a dozen top scholars from the Supreme Hall and his unusually vast spirit power among peers, he could not fight forever. Retreating was the wiser choice. Ku-ku. Ku-wu. Fei Gu shook its head. The recent bloody slaughter hadn't rattled the fat owl's mind. It fluttered up unsteadily to scout the path ahead for Chen Zhou. Not far off, Wang Jingxi leaned against an ancient tree, chest heaving, breaths ragged with exhaustion. His once broad skeletal frame slowly contracted back toward its normal shape, clear evidence of a fierce fight just now. Not long after entering the Spirit Beast Forest, he'd run into a pack of green wind wolves. 10-year beasts weren't strong individually, but their speed and numbers made them dangerous. Wang Jingxi had been surrounded by more than 20 of them. If not for his spirit transformation granting exceptional physical defense, he would have been finished. Even so, these beasts had given him no significant improvement to his soul spirit. The bone spirit, which, like Shishai's metal soul spirit, was a core existence fused directly into his spirit. At this moment, his spirit power was under 40% and his stamina nearly exhausted. He urgently needed rest. The sky suddenly dimmed. An uneasy prickling climbed Wang Jingxi's spine, and he looked up. His pupils contracted as a woman's face rushed toward him, beautiful but horribly distorted, fanged, mouth open, a grin that chilled the heart. Even worse, the human face grew on the abdomen of a giant spider. Wang Jingxi felt his heart stop. Cold sweat drenched his back. Danger had arrived. In the spirit beast world, the man-faced demon spider was regarded as a top hunter. Its appalling strength inspired terror in all who heard its name. Even a century-old man-faced demon spider could contend with ordinary 1,000-year spirit beasts, a true killing machine. Facing such an enemy, Wang Jingxi chose the wisest course. Flee. He rolled and scrambled away. Even at full strength, he would have no chance. Now he was depleted. Only escape offered any hope. Fate did not favor him. With a thump, his body froze as if wrapped in an invisible web. No matter how hard he strained, he could not break free. Even sending a distress signal felt like a luxury. The situation was the most desperate it had ever been. Though Wang Jingxi understood the Spirit Ascension platform did not literally mean death, when life was on the line, how could one tell reality from illusion? Swish! Just as all hope seemed gone, a wind blade cut the air and struck the man-faced demon spider that was lunging at Wang Jingxi. To avoid the attack, the spider abandoned its prey and leapt back. The wind blade struck the taut web, loosening the bonds that held Wang Jingxi. Chen Zhou, Wang Jingxi stared at the owl perched on a branch and asked uncertainly, "You're lucky." Chen Zhou walked over calmly from nearby, eyes gleaming with curiosity as he observed the top-tier spirit beast, a creature famed for being able to match thousand-year spirit beasts even at a century of age. The look in his eyes was not the terror one would expect. Instead, it held the eager focus of a researcher. Before him stood not merely a notorious man-eating predator, but a perfect subject for study, a Xiao Bai he could dissect with impunity. The man-faced demon spider was immense. The twisted woman's face on its abdomen was horribly lifelike. Its 8 sharp legs moved lightly on the ground, scraping with a chilling hiss. A pungent, fishy stench hung in the air like a warning. "Chen Zhou, why are you here?" Wang Jingxi panted, barely standing, a mixture of relief and confusion on his face. Chen Zhou did not answer immediately. He kept watching the spider, a faint smile forming at the corner of his mouth. "This man-faced demon spider is a good specimen." "A good specimen?" Wang Jingxi blinked, then gave a bitter smile. "This is a 100-year man-faced demon spider, a top predator even 1,000-year beasts avoid. How are 2 spirit grandmasters supposed to deal with it?" Chen Zhou shook his head, gaze sharp and composed. He raised his right hand, and an amethyst of original energy floated into his palm, glowing dimly. "Fei Gu, prepare." "Cuckoo." Fei Gu let out a clear cry and flew to Chen Zhou's shoulder, eyes locked on the man-faced demon spider, wings half spread, ready to strike. Wang Jingxi felt a wave of discomfort and realized with a jolt that he had been poisoned. He gritted his teeth and stepped in front of Chen Zhou, voice low and steady. "I've been poisoned. From now on, I can only try my best to be the wall in front of you." Chen Zhou glanced at him, then chuckled softly, a teasing note in his voice. "All right." The man-faced demon spider seemed to sense the threat. Its 8 eyes flashed an eerie green, and the face on its abdomen twisted grotesquely as it let out a piercing shriek and lunged at Chen Zhou. "Damn beast, I'm still here!" Wang Jingxi, having escaped death, now felt rage blazing through him. Though fear lingered, his knowledge that he would not actually die fueled his fighting spirit. He fully activated his soul spirit, Bone Dragon King. The top-tier dark spirit manifested, a phantom dragon glaring at the pouncing spider. Chen Zhou stood behind Wang Jingxi, calmly assessing the fight. He had not intended to let Wang Jingxi take on the spider alone, but this moment, Wang's fury and resolve, gave him a chance to observe and think. Wang Jingxi's Bone Dragon King emitted a thick, oppressive dark aura. He unleashed his first spirit ability, Bone Dragon Claw. A gigantic bone claw condensed in the air and swung with savage force toward the man-faced demon spider. Chapter 56, Retreat. The man-faced demon spider moved with terrifying speed, leaping aside and dodging Wang Jingxi's blow as if the attack had never reached it. This was no ordinary spirit beast. Its intelligence far outstripped that of common beasts. After evading, it slid to the side and lashed out with its 8 blade-like legs. "Alchemy," Chen Zhou intoned, "unceasing water waves." Rings of rippling water erupted at Wang Jingxi's side. The spider's legs struck the waves and found nothing to bite into. The water didn't act like a simple shield so much as stacked layers of impact, continuously deflecting incoming attacks. The spider's legs sank into the waves as if into quicksand, unable to make any progress. Wang Jingxi let out a relieved breath and felt a surge of respect. Chen Zhou's strength was formidable. How many more tricks did this man have? No time to ponder, though. The man-faced demon spider only grew angrier. It gave a piercing shriek. The woman's face on its abdomen contorted grotesquely, and its 8 eyes pulsed with a ghostly green light, searching for another opening. Chen Zhou stood calmly behind Wang Jingxi, watching every movement and waiting for the right moment. "Wang Jingxi, fall back," Chen Zhou said in a low voice. There was no mistaking the authority behind it. Wang Jingxi hesitated, then retreated a few steps, only to stop just in front of Chen Zhou, as if keeping his promise to stand behind him. Fei Gu, Fat Gu, spread its wings and circled overhead, its sharp black eyes fixed on the spider. Each beat of its wings seemed to carve the air, faint wind blades formed around it. Chen Zhou lifted his right hand. The original energy amethyst hovered into his palm and emitted a soft glow, drawing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and rapidly accelerating his in-combat recovery. His gaze was calm and razor-sharp, as if he had already calculated the spider's next moves. Alchemy. Earth Quagmire. Chen Zhou clapped his hands to the ground. The inscription of the water spiritual rune on his palm amplified his speed and precision with transformation alchemy, allowing him to mobilize the needed energies and methods with a thought. The hard earth churned and turned to sucking mud, robbing the spider of any leverage as it attempted to evade the wind blades. Desperate, the man-faced demon spider spat out sticky silk toward the incoming blades, trying to form a barrier. But Fei Gu's wind blades were too fast. Before the web could spread, the blades had already sliced through and tore toward the spider. It twisted and contracted, narrowly avoiding the worst of the strike, but the mud began to engulf it. Its legs were trapped, movement slowed. Fei Gu's round eyes flared a fierce red. Once a raptor-type spirit beast from the ancient era and honed by the slow attunement to the original energy amethyst, it was no mere fat bird. A flash of disdain crossed its face at the spider's arrogant posture. Then, with a violent flap that drove a gale, Fei Gu surged like lightning toward its prey. Though trapped, the spider refused to show weakness. Its multitude of eyes stared coldly, and the woman's face on its abdomen twisted, as if issuing a silent warning. "Don't underestimate me." Wary but unflinching, Fei Gu's wings beat harder. A lightning-fast airflow trailed behind it, shredding the dust into streaks and forming a massive vortex of wind blades. It dove like a storm-born predator. Chen Zhou observed quietly, piecing together the spider's strengths and habits. This opponent was not only terrifying in appearance, but possessed cunning and instincts honed to a razor edge. He let the beast fight. "Fei Gu, go!" he thought, encouragingly, unwilling to interrupt the bird's growth. Wind pressure condensed around Fei Gu as it struck. The wind blades battered the spider, and the trapped creature, pushed, slammed, and crushed, was driven deeper into the mud. It could no longer maneuver effectively. With a heavy impact, Fei Gu's attack connected, and the spider emitted a dull, pained shriek as its body thudded into the swamp. Wang Jingxi watched with mounting anxiety. He wanted to help, but the poison gnawing within him sapped his strength. He could no longer call on his spirit power. All he could do was watch and fret. Then the man-faced demon spider reared up. Through the swirling wind blades and dust, it forced out several wisps of black poisonous mist, its bloodthirsty skill, aimed straight at Fei Gu. Any creature wrapped in that mist would suffer grievous harm. "Fei Gu, be careful," Chen Zhou snapped, realizing the danger. Chapter 57, The End. Chen Gugu had no intention of retreating. It spread its wings and climbed higher, determined not to solve the problem by hiding. Its beak trembled, and wind blades swirled around it in a steady stream of power. A night wind-carved owl, favored by the wind element, was not so easily felled by mere poisonous mist. "Gugu!" Chen Gugu cried out, and the air around them hummed and vibrated. Wind blades formed into a raging vortex and swept into the thick poisonous fog. The hurricane-force winds shredded the gas like silk, cutting the mist into fragments that dissipated into the air. Wang Jingxi watched with stunned disbelief. He had not expected the plump bird to be so powerful, capable not only of resisting the man-faced demon spider, but of turning the attack aside and countering with ferocious force. Chen Zhou allowed himself a pleased smile. He couldn't truly let Chen Gugu risk itself unnecessarily. That man-faced demon spider might seem disheveled now, but finishing it outright would surely cost Chen Gugu dearly. He stepped forward, face hardening. "Alchemy," he commanded. "Stone blade wall." A water spiritual rune, the sign of change, flickered in the core of Chen Zhou's spirit sea. With a deep rumble from the earth itself, the man-faced demon spider recoiled, spraying sticky, venomous webbing. Its sharp legs pulled free of the mud, poised to stab at Chen Zhou and Wang Jingxi. Before it could strike, a wall of earth rose from the soft ground, studded with countless razor blades. Walls rose from every direction, closing like the jaws of some great beast and trapping the spider in an iron cage. The blades caught the daylight with a cold glint, ready to shred the creature to pieces. The man-faced demon spider screamed, its 8 legs thrashing wildly against the stone. But the earth walls were tougher than it had imagined, and each contact left deep, bone-deep wounds. Blood and gore spattered the walls as the spider battered itself against the prison. Chen Zhou circled above, crying out excitedly as if cheering its master. Its gentle wing beats kicked up a breeze that cleared the dust. Chen Zhou stood beyond the earthen barrier, eyes calm and unblinking. He raised his right hand and squeezed. The original energy amethyst sank into him, its power absorbed to replenish his alchemy energy. He had enough now to finish it. "Crush it," Chen Zhou ordered. The 4 earth walls began to press inward, the densely packed blades closed like countless teeth, inching toward the trapped spider. The creature's 8 eyes flared with terror and despair. It thrashed desperately, but every movement only drove the blades deeper into its body. The blades cut and sliced with a wet, sizzling sound. The spider's screams pierced the air as blood gushed from wounds that revealed bone. Chen Zhou watched with cold, precise attention. In the world of spirit beasts, the law of the jungle was absolute. The man-faced demon spider had been a notorious top predator. Many spirit masters and spirit beasts had fallen to it. If Chen Zhou had arrived even a moment later, Wang Jingxi might have already been devoured. Even though death in the Spirit Ascension platform was not absolute, dying there in such a way could have unpredictable consequences for one's spirit. There was no room for pity. The spider's struggles gradually weakened. Its body had been mangled by the blades, its legs hung limp, and the light in its many eyes dimmed. With a final thud, the earth walls met, and the spider's body was crushed into a heap of shredded flesh and blood. Chen Zhou relaxed his hand. The walls sank back into the ground and vanished, leaving only the metallic copper tang of blood hanging in the air. "It's over," Chen Zhou said quietly, then turned to Wang Jingxi. Wang Jingxi sat down heavily, face drained of color. He stared at Chen Zhou and the scene around him, still in shock. Though he had known Chen Zhou was capable, seeing it firsthand overwhelmed him. Chen Zhou had not only deflected the spider's assault, but had killed it utterly, a level of power beyond his imagination. Around them, Wu Jiankong and Long Hengshu from the Spirit Transfer Pagoda's primary Spirit Ascension Platform Zone 5, and Zhang Yangzi, who had just exited, stared open-mouthed. From their perspective, Chen Zhou was a first-strike killer, a spirit master whose raw strength and innumerable elemental skills, assisted by a soul spirit as powerful as a high-level century beast, made him untouchable. In Wu Jiankong's estimation, no one within the domain of a 2-ring spirit grandmaster could defeat Chen Zhou, not even the proud prodigies of Shrek Academy. The man-faced demon spider's ruined body condensed into a ball of light and was absorbed into Chen Zhou's body. Wang Jingxi finally breathed. Though his complexion remained pale, he could still feel the toxin's residue. He bowed his head slightly, forcing the words out. "Chen Zhou, thank you." He meant it. Had Chen Zhou not arrived, he would have been devoured, or at the very least left with lasting terror. Wang Jingxi's voice trembled with relief and lingering fear as Chen Zhou cooed above, circling its master protectively. Chapter 58, Fei Gu's Improvement. Chen Zhou nodded and moved over to Wang Jingxi. He crouched down and checked him carefully. "You've been poisoned. The toxin has already started to spread." Chen Zhou's brow tightened. His tone was serious. Wang Jingxi managed a bitter smile. "Yeah, the man-faced demon spider's poison isn't simple. I feel completely drained. My spirit power is leaking away. I probably won't last much longer." Chen Zhou said nothing, only looked at him as if he could sense something left unsaid. Wang Jingxi's voice was quiet and earnest. "I misunderstood you all this time. I always thought you were cold-blooded. This time, thank you. Truly." Seeing Wang Jingxi's pale face and sincere eyes, Chen Zhou was slightly surprised. Then a faint smile touched his lips. He only nodded in acknowledgement. "Let's go. You should gain more from the Spirit Ascension platform session." "Don't worry about me. I'll use the distress signal myself." Wang Jingxi rubbed his nose and smiled. He knew he was no longer fit to keep fighting. Staying on the platform would only slow Chen Zhou down. Better to withdraw now and keep what dignity he could. Chen Zhou didn't stop him. He simply nodded and stood. He swept his gaze over the area once more. Gugu? Fei Gu fluttered up onto Chen Zhou's shoulder and nuzzled his cheek as if to comfort him. Chen Zhou smiled and stroked its head. Let's go, Fei Gu. We'll keep moving. Wang Jinshi watched them leave, a tangle of emotions in his chest. He had never expected to feel such complicated things for Chen Zhou. Old hostility and misunderstanding seemed to dissolve, replaced by admiration and gratitude. Chen Zhou, what sort of person are you, really? He whispered to himself, then pulled the distress signal from his bosom and pressed it without hesitation. A flash of light, and his figure faded from the Spirit Ascension platform. Chen Zhou continued deeper into the forest with Fei Gu. His steps were steady and sure, his eyes like torches as they swept the surroundings. Fei Gu sat firm on his shoulder, its round eyes scanning, vigilant. The forest was thick and silent, full of hidden dangers. Chen Zhou knew the real trial had only just begun. The Mu Kuai wolf and the man-faced demon spider had been just the start. More powerful spirit beasts lurked in the shadows, waiting for prey. Gu Gu! Fei Gu suddenly gave a low cry and flapped its wings, sensing something off. Chen Zhou froze, following its gaze to the bushes ahead. A rustling, then a massive shape pushed through the undergrowth. An enormous spirit beast emerged, covered in thick scales, heavy-limbed, each step making the ground shudder. 2 sharp horns crowned its head, and its eyes shone with ferocity. Clearly, it was a dangerous specimen. Ironclad rhinoceros? Chen Zhou murmured, narrowing his eyes. The ironclad rhinoceros was famed for its near-impenetrable defense. Slow, but deadly in strength and resilience, an elder one could make most spirit masters think twice. Chen Zhou didn't rush. He watched its movements carefully. With such a defensive creature, a head-on strike would waste spirit power. He had to find an opening and hit decisively. The rhinoceros sniffed the air, then gave a low, threatening roar as it began to lumber forward. Its steps were ponderous and oppressive, like a moving mountain. Gu-gu! Fei Gu cried out and suddenly spread its wings. A whipping gust of wind swept toward the rhinoceros. Wind blades cut through the air and slashed at the beast, but it stood its ground. The blades clinked against its scales and produced little more than sparks. As expected, wind blades won't do much, Chen Zhou thought, shifting strategy. He raised his right hand. The primordial energy amethyst levitated into his palm, glowing faintly. Alchemy, he intoned. Forest creation. The ground trembled at his words. Sharp spikes erupted from the earth like a sudden, stony thicket, springing up under the rhinoceros' feet. The spikes pulsed with spirit energy and jabbed at the beast's belly. Though its armor-like hide was formidable, the belly was a weaker spot. Caught off guard, the rhinoceros reared its front legs to dodge, but several spikes sank into its flank. A terrible roar split the air as the rhinoceros staggered, blood streaming from the wounds. It tried to shake the spikes free, but they were rooted in place. Chen Zhou's eyes narrowed. Once you found the weak point in a heavily defended foe, its threat dropped sharply. The stabbed belly had cost the rhinoceros its balance. Fei Gu, continue, Chen Zhou whispered, his hands already forming seals. Alchemy energy coalesced inside him, pushing outward. Fei Gu answered with 2 sharp gu-gu calls. It darted forward like a streak of wind, then halted inches from the beast's head. Its wings beat furiously, whipping a concentrated whirlwind toward the rhinoceros. Wind blades and whirlwinds braided into an intricate, slicing net that pinned the rhinoceros's head. While its body was armored, its head's defense was relatively less stout. The incessant cutting tore into it. The rhinoceros thrashed, trying to free itself, but Fei Gu's assault didn't relent. Wind blades fell like rain, slitting its head, and blood streaked its scales. After absorbing several of the Spirit Ascension platform's light clusters, Fei Gu had grown noticeably stronger. Its wind attacks were sharper, faster, and deadlier. With one last mournful roar, the ironclad rhinoceros convulsed and collapsed, its great bulk hitting the ground with a resounding thud. Its eyes dimmed, its body stilled. The creature had died. Chapter 59, Rampage Black Steed. Chen Zhou stepped forward slowly, his gaze calm as he stared at the ironclad rhinoceros sprawled on the ground. He lifted his right hand. The original energy amethyst hovered in his palm, a faint glow emanating from it. A ball of light condensed over the rhinoceros's corpse and drifted into the purple crystal. Gu-gu, gu-woo, Fei Gu, The rotund little bird, nicknamed Fat Goo, flew up to Chen Zhou's shoulder and rubbed its beak against his cheek as if congratulating him. Chen Zhou smiled and stroked Fei Gu's head. "Well done, Fei Gu," he whispered. He drew a slow breath, feeling the world's flow, and then walked off in a chosen direction. Fei Gu cocked its head in confusion. "Gu Wu?" it chirped. "I sensed a big one," Chen Zhou replied mentally. "A big one that could help you grow faster." Through his mental force, he could feel Fei Gu's spirit power had jumped by about 30 to 40%, essentially a century's worth of cultivation. That was why Fei Gu's windblade had felt easier against the ironclad rhinoceros than expected. In nature, creatures that did not hide their aura were almost always top predators. The same held true among spirit beasts on the Spirit Ascension platform. Those who didn't conceal their power were the alpha beasts of the area. According to Chen Zhou's information, the highest spirit beasts in the primary Spirit Ascension platform reached only the 1,000-year level. So unless he encountered an extremely exceptional top-tier spirit beast, he was confident he could prevail. Not far away, a powerful black horse lay dozing beside the carcass of an animal twice its size, the horse's meal. The rampage black steed, a symbol of speed, power, and untamed freedom. Its silhouette was like lightning in the night, its neigh like a gale that shook the heart. Chen Zhou fixed his gaze on the steed. His chest tightened. This kind of spirit beast was exceedingly rare, prized for its raw strength and swiftness, one of the most coveted sources of spirit rings for spirit masters. Chen Zhou frowned. The rampage black steed was far beyond the range he had planned to hunt. 1,000-year cultivation, top tier. Once such a beast exceeded 5,000 years of cultivation, it could take on 10,000-year spirit beasts. One man and one bird simply wouldn't be able to contend with that. "Don't make a sound. Let's retreat," he told Fei Gu silently, easing backward toward the steed. He tried to keep his distance as his mental scouting continued. It was better to be cautious. He had not seen the full extent of a 1,000-year beast's speed, and its reputation for matching 10,000-year opponents was not to be tested. A sudden wind brushed past, and Chen Zhou's muscles tensed. Not good. They were upwind. As if alerted by his scent, the rampage black steed rose in an instant. Its massive body towered like a small mountain. 4 hooves slammed the earth, and its eyes blazed like coals. The steed let loose a thunderous neigh that rolled through the forest, shaking leaves from the branches. White mist steamed from its nostrils. It pawed the ground, and then transformed into a streak of black lightning, charging straight at Chen Zhou and Fei Gu. Chen Zhou felt his heart drop. Escape was no longer an option. The steed's speed was terrifying. Even if he ran flat out, he might not outrun it. Fei Gu was quick for a bird, but had no chance against a top-tier spirit beast like this. "Prepare for battle," Chen Zhou shouted, snapping into focus. His right hand lifted, and the original energy amethyst floated above his palm, the glow steady as alchemical energy began to circulate through him. He drew in the world's spiritual energy to replenish himself. Fei Gu flapped violently and settled on his shoulder, eyes locked on the approaching steed. The bird spread its wings slightly, the air around them vibrated, and thin wind blades began to form. The rampage black steed appeared almost instantly before them, hooves pounding up dirt as its bulk barreled forward. It loomed over Chen Zhou like a crushing weight, its eyes wild with the intent to shred. Chen Zhou suppressed his emotions, his mind narrowed to a precise instrument, calculating the steed's speed, trajectory, and possible maneuvers. He lifted his right hand and channeled the amethyst's power. Alchemy, earth barrier. The ground trembled. A thick earthen wall surged up from the soil, solid and rune-etched, glowing faintly with alchemical enhancement. It exploded into the steed's path. The rampage black steed didn't slow. It struck the earthen wall with full force. The impact shook the barrier and hairline cracks spidered across its surface, but the wall held. The steed bellowed in fury. "Goo-goo!" Fei Gu cried, flapping its wings and whipping up a violent gust. Razor-like wind blades rained toward the steed, but it reacted with frightening speed. With a single powerful leap, it evaded the blades, arced through the air, and surged back toward Chen Zhou. "Alchemy, vine binding!" Chen Zhou roared, slashing his hand through the air. The earth split open. Thick, muscular vines exploded from the ground and lashed out, coiling like living ropes to entangle the rampage black steed. Chapter 60. Exquisite Tactics. These vines were no ordinary plants. They'd been enhanced by alchemy and far outmatched common vines in toughness. They coiled quickly around the rampage black steed's 4 hooves, trying to pin it in place. But the steed's strength exceeded Chen Zhou's expectations. With a sudden surge, all 4 hooves kicked outward and actually tore the vines free. It continued its charge toward him. This thing's strength, terrifying. Chen Zhou murmured inwardly. He knew that binding techniques alone wouldn't hold the rampage black steed. "Gugu, come back," he ordered. Before Chen Gugu could return by its own will, Chen Zhou used his mental force to forcibly recall his soul spirit into his body. He fixed a hard stare on the rampage black steed as it bore down on him. A top-tier bloodline, able to contest a 10,000-year spirit beast with only 5,000 years of cultivation. It truly lived up to its reputation. Chen Zhou felt a thrill he hadn't felt in years. Whether it had been 10, 20, 50, 100 years, his soul, reborn into this world, finally opened to those suppressed emotions. The edge of death rush returned. His pulse quickened. His blood burned. He hadn't felt that desperate excitement since he'd been fighting just to survive. "Let's see how strong you really are," he said, a touch of fanatic fire lighting his eyes. He lifted his right hand slowly. An original energy amethyst hovered in his palm, casting a faint glow as alchemical energy swirled through him and condensed into a more potent force. The rampage black steed sensed his intent. Its eyes flashed with ferocity, and it stomped the ground with a deafening neigh before surging forward. "Alchemy," Chen Zhou called. "Spear of the earth." He swung his right hand in a brutal arc. The ground split, and razor-like earth spikes erupted like a forest beneath the steed's hooves. The spikes were honed with spirit power and shot toward the steed's belly. Though fast, the rampaging beast couldn't avoid them all. It reared and twisted, but several spikes pierced its flank. "Roar!" The steed screamed in pain. Blood spattered from the wounds. Anger flared in its eyes. With a violent force, its hooves smashed the spikes aside, and it continued its charge. Chen Zhou's face fell. The creature had bled, but remained unfazed in movement. A direct clash would be costly. Alchemy. Vast mist. Alchemical energy condensed into vapor and rose around Chen Zhou, spreading outward in a thick fog. The rampage black steed was no fool. Its top-tier bloodline had sharpened not only its strength, but its senses and wits. It snorted, planted its hooves, and shot forward like a black bolt. In an instant, it dove into the dense mist, iron hooves raised to crush whatever waited inside. With a resounding thud, the hooves slammed into the earth and left a deep crater. But Chen Zhou was gone from that spot, as if he had never stood there. The steed's nostrils flared, trying to pick up his scent, but the alchemical vapor in the fog muddled the air and disrupted its olfactory sense. A purple crystal hovered high above, drawing the world's spiritual energy to it like a magnet, and the steed's attention flicked upward. "Alchemy!" Chen Zhou shouted. "Earth Flame Ascension!" He exploded from the mist, hands flashing seals as alchemy surged through him. The ground ruptured, and pillars of searing flame shot skyward. The rampage black steed reacted instantly, leaping to avoid the pillars. Yet the heat was so intense that even its thick hide hissed under the scorch of the flames. A pained roar escaped it, and fury contorted its features. It twisted in midair, smashed back to the ground, and charged again, closing the distance to Chen Zhou in a heartbeat, hooves raised high to strike at his head. Alchemy. Water curtain heaven's splendor. Chen Zhou's hands moved with equal speed. A dense curtain of water descended like a waterfall and sank the steed's attack into oblivion. The rampage black steed's iron hooves crashed against the water curtain with a dull boom. The curtain shuddered but held. Now they faced each other with barely a foot between them, the thin, watery veil the only thing separating man and beast. The black steed's eyes were wild with bloodlust and fury. Chen Zhou's expression was composed, his gaze cold and decisive. He knew brute force and defense wouldn't win this fight. He had to find a weakness and strike decisively. But the creature's speed and defense were terrifying. A top-grade 1,000-year spirit beast was beyond what a spirit grandmaster like him could easily subdue. Then Chen Zhou's lips curved. Checkmate. Alchemy. High-temperature steam pressure. His eyes glittered with a manic brilliance, and a mocking grin spread across his face. Confusion crossed the rampage black steed's features until the ground beneath them began to heat unbearably. Flames and the descending water curtain met, instantly turning to scalding steam. A furnace of boiling vapor enveloped both combatants, searing and choking. Chen Zhou had already triggered his distress signal. In the instant before the steam could claim him, his body dissolved into a streak of light and he left the Spirit Ascension platform. Darkness dissolved into light as Chen Zhou opened his eyes within a metal cabinet. He checked his body and soul with mental force and found nothing amiss. He sat up, stretched, and treated those last tightrope moments between life and death as if they'd been nothing more than a leisurely stroll after a meal. Around him, 7 people watched, including Wu Jiangkong and Long Hengsu. They regarded him with looks bordering on monstrous curiosity. "Something wrong?" Chen Zhou asked, puzzled but calm as he stood, his indifferent expression returning. Wu Jiangkong's wary words hung on his tongue for a moment, then he simply said, "You're fine."